I would just like to say a few things about today and tomorrow before we leave the floor to Marco and Diana. Some practical information. One thing is that some of you are changing your trailers. And if you have done so already, please deliver it to our dear technician after this session with Marco and Diana. If you haven't done that yet, if you can't deliver it, please go and talk to him about when you will deliver it, because it's nice for him to know in order to get everything down at his computer so that we can run it nicely tomorrow. As for the individual meetings this afternoon, you've all got the schedule. And as Rada said, we had expected to have some more rooms, but due to examines at the Goethe Institute, we have this room and outside and the cafeteria, but there's also others there, as you notice. So I will urge you to be flexible. Several of us will be here in this room, some outside and right outside and at the other side of the staircase. And since it's individual meetings, so it means it's only maybe 2 or 3 people, I think we shall improvise. Hopefully we can sit, different places around. And if you feel that, no, let's go outside instead, just do that. Just find a place where it's best for you. But we'll start with sitting in here and outside. Find us, and we'll find out, I'm sure. If you have earphones, bring them, because then we can see your trailers without too much disturbing the others too much, right? And talking about schedule, that kind of schedule doesn't work without us being precise, because everybody changes at the same time. So there's no flexibility. There's no going, 5 minutes overtime, because then everything stops at the other meetings. So there I would really urge you and the tutors to be disciplined. It is half an hour, and we have to swap at the same time. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? So if you have left your meeting and you go to the tutor that you're supposed to meet, go to him and her, so that you're visible, so that they know, okay, we have to stop, we have to finish and move on. Huh? Don't be shy. Just go there and make them embarrassed. Okay. And then a small word about the pitching tomorrow. I just want to remind you that. Good morning, Eva. I just want to remind you that it's about 10 minutes altogether, and I think for the purpose of practicing, you will have the 7 minutes, because it's what you will meet very often if you do pitching at other sessions. So for the purpose of practicing that, you should keep your 7 minutes. So when you're not, if you haven't done it already, when you're not having an individual meeting, maybe you should practice your pitch. And I think there is a difference between pitching and the presentation you did yesterday, because yesterday we wanted to learn about your project, where you were, and stuff like that, to get a sense of that. But in a pitching, it's presenting your film so that we can really visualize your film. I think there are 2 main things that you should try to achieve when you pitch. One thing is that we understand the film, not the subject, not the theme, not the place, not the whatever, but the film. Any character, any place, any theme, or whatever we call it, can be turned into a film. doesn't matter whether we thought before you started your presentation that it interested or not, because the way into that is you. So a pitching, I would say, is very much about us getting as close as possible to your vision of the film. Pardon? So if I know it's a bit fluffy, but that's what I think that's what it's very much about. It's understanding your vision of the film. So it's not a lot about talking about the place or the situation or the importance. It's your, as a director, how you see it, right? Okay, I think that's about it. Marco and Diana, welcome. We're looking forward to your talk about filmmakers in a time of political change. I know, and we know as well, that of course the situation in Syria and Greece are radically different. So it's not about comparing, but still you are both in living in countries where there are radical changes going on, and of course as a filmmaker, especially making documentaries, you must reflect on that. It must influence how you see your work now. So please, you will start.
I will just make a very, very small introduction to tell you how we will proceed. We will try, of course, to give our vision and not to speak about the situation. We have a small introduction about the situation. So when you told me being a documentary filmmaker in time of political change is exemplified by Syria and Greece, I must admit that I said it's like to have to be a homosexual in San Francisco or in Jeddah. But maybe if you, at the end, you can find what is to be an homosexual. So like this, in those two so different examples of in time of size, we talked with Diana and we decided not to make it parallel, you know. So we make it separately because of the differences there are, because we didn't have time to work together, we didn't know each other before. And last but not the least, because I've never liked in films the kind of parallel montage, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It pushes the meaning, and I like better to make the meaning emerge by itself. So Diana will start. It's a question of French gallantry, and also a question because I have a bad thing, I talk too much, and if I started, maybe she doesn't have time to make her lecture. And at the end, we will have a small talk together. Maybe we can have some interesting discussion between the things we will arise of our lectures.
I think so. Hello, I'm the homosexual from Saudi Arabia, obviously. So, welcome. Yes, when I was thinking about the title of the inspirational session, whether it is that it's political changes, it helped me a lot to rephrase the whole condition in Syria, to say this is political change, because being inside, you don't see it as political change. You don't label it, you just live it. So it becomes part of life. And I think that was the first starting point towards how I want to approach this session. But let me tell you a little bit about me for those who don't know me. I come from a completely different world than documentary filmmaking. I studied English literature when I was at college, against my will. That's why I became a documentary filmmaker. Anyway, and then I worked in communication and marketing. So, and then moved into economics, very junior or small young career. And then I met my partner, and we decided to establish a film company where we can do a lot of things. But a few years later, we started, of course, we did commercials, we did fiction films, or we have provided services for fiction films. We didn't produce fiction films. We work at many disciplines, including post-production services, etc., etc. And then we found ourselves in a world we don't like. Red carpets, stars, actors, media, etc. We didn't like that. So we thought, okay, coming from a socialist leftist mentality, we like to own the tools, the toys, and to play with them and to produce something. But we don't want to be in a world of stardom. So we said we work in documentary, because in documentary we can cherish our integrity. We like history, we like politics, we like this. So we're going to work in documentary, and not in classical documentary, in human and social political documentaries, creative documentaries. So that's how we started in 2005. After 3 years of establishment, we started producing documentaries. And it was very independent, very, unplanned, until 2006, when we decided to drop everything else and just work in documentary. So in 2008, we established a documentary film festival also. That was the non-profit part of our work, and still is. And we called it Docsbox. So we invited people to work with us as partners in Docsbox in Syria. It was very new, because in Syria, we don't have independent cultural events. So it was a rough beginning, of course. The worst year was 2009, when the government decided, because in Syria we had a rule or a custom that whenever you want to gather people, you need a lot of permits. And if you want to show anything, you need to get permission, etc., etc., or invite guests, anything. So it was, that's why everything has to to happen under a patronage. And it's not a patronage where you get financing for the project or you get in kinds. It's a patronage that means if I did the festival under the patronage of the National Film Organization, which is the government state body for film in Syria, that means that all the Secret Service, if they want to ask or blame, they go to the National Film Organization. And then the National Film Organization would discipline us. This is the way the patronage goes. So as long as we were good boys and girls, we were not disciplined. But in 2009, we were very disciplined. And we decided to we threatened by a scandal, because we had international funding and so on. So that was the year, the second edition. That was the year that placed Docsbox as an independent event. It's not independent, but as independent as possible. And that made a lot of change in the cultural arena in Damascus, but also in the whole of Syria. And it became the festival, not only documentary or the event. That's why we call it the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age in Syria, because that's why it attracted a lot of youth, because it proved that things are possible. They're strange, they could be devastating, but they are possible. And when the revolution started or erupted in Syria, it started 2 days after the closing of the 4th edition, just 2 days after that. So you can imagine the atmosphere in Syria during the festival. It was tense. We had a lot of pressure from the government, because they were also very tensed and stressed. And a month before the festival, Omar Amir Alai, the veteran Syrian documentary filmmaker, also passed away. So there was also another kind of tense because, and it was supposed to be the day of anger in Syria, the 5th of February. That was the day when he passed away. So anyway, it was a very stressful edition, as usual. I'm saying all of this about the festival, not to praise it. I'm proud of it, but that's not the point. I'm saying this about the festival because today in the revolution, a lot of the activists in the revolution are the audience of DocsBox. I'm very proud to say that on the second edition, which was about to be canceled by the government, we closed the festival by Burma VJ, which was, I don't know how many of you saw Burma VJ? Okay, 3, 4, okay. Burma VJ is a documentary made by a well-known Danish documentary filmmaker, Anas Ostergaard. Yes. And it was a collection, it was a reconstruction and structured film of activist video from activists from Burma during the Burma Revolution. When was the Burma Revolution? I forgot. Which year? Anybody knows? Okay, so we are not embarrassed. Anyway, so it was, I think 5 maybe, yeah. So it was a collection of these videos that the activists in Burma were trying to smuggle out of the country. And he reconstructed all these videos in collaboration with them and made a beautiful documentary about how to smuggle, how to film the oppression, the violence, the injustice, and how to smuggle these videos outside. And that film, I think, toured hundreds and, no, not hundreds, but 100 maybe, festival around the world and was awarded repeatedly around the world. And I think that film was never been possible without these eyewitness videos. And the reason why I say that, it's so obvious, I guess, already, is that if we are filmmakers, eyewitnesses or filmmakers, I remember one of the discussions in one of the juries around Burma VJ, that whether Anas Ostergaard should be awarded or not as a filmmaker, because all he did, in one point of view, all he did was to gather these videos and to make a film, but he didn't do the actual filming. And for many, it was, of course, it's a filmmaker because he put this material into context. So the debate is open, of course. It's not an open-ended debate. I'm not a fanatic person who would say, no, of course he's a filmmaker, no. But I would say that the credit is really collective. Yes, what happened in Syria, or actually to start with, what happened in Syria? There was a revolution that started by the working class, of course, a very normal classical revolution, and was oppressed later by the regime in a very brutal way, and it still continues. Of course, thanks to the mobile phones and the internet, which were in the first place brought to the country by Bashar al-Assad. It was his personal campaign before he became president, to modernize Syria. So he brought in mobiles, which was not allowed. The GSM providers were not allowed, and the internet service providers were not also, and that was in 2000. So after 12 years or 11 years, the generation which were so young when these two technologies were introduced in Syria used these technologies to overthrow the president. And I find that very nice. So what happened is that everybody started filming because, you know, there is this trend of mobiles. I mean, any person would like to, oh yes, I have a mobile, I have a camera. Okay, three megapixel, no, 5 megapixel, okay. You know, this is how people, you know, like to buy mobiles. So a lot of mobiles were used as tools in the revolution because the thing is, I don't know if you have such a saying, but we have a saying, don't show your dirty laundry. Okay, you have that. So we have the same thing. So that was, in the first speech he went on television, Bashar al-Assad said, I'm not angry with those who protest. I'm angry with those who record and upload. So that was his green ticket for the secret police and for the army to kill anyone who's having a camera or mobile, who's recording. And that's what happens, and what's still happening. So protesters would be detained, would be tortured, but not precisely killed. But camera persons are killed. So I can imagine any filmmaker in such a condition, documentary filmmaker who, in such a condition, who did not study for 4, 5, 6 years in cinema, or who have studied, to think about, he or she would think about, why should I risk my life to film a short thing, you know? And then you get into this dilemma of whether I'm a citizen or I'm a filmmaker or am I both? And it's not easy, you know? Because people rediscovered their citizenship, they reclaimed it. And for non-filmmakers, it was much easier. For doctors, for example, it is a very hard question, but it's easy. As a doctor and a civilian and a citizen, I need to help my fellow, you know? Anyway, so filmmakers for quite a bit in the revolution, they were idle. They were at shock. What should we do? You know, how do we claim our citizenship? How do we claim our status? How do we claim our country? How do we participate? You know, and of course the revolution is faster than anybody. So a lot of new filmmakers, or whether we give them the stamp of being a filmmaker or not, a lot of filmmakers have emerged, young filmmakers who were courageous enough to go to the street and start filming and putting down these films because of the need. They had to learn to edit, they had to learn to film, they had to learn about light, how do you stabilize your camera, all these, you know, for us maybe silly things they had to learn from all over again. And there were filmmakers who decided to go and work, okay? And today I bring with me a short documentary. It's 25 minutes by a Syrian filmmaker, Anonymous, which was made in last August, filmed in last August actually, but finished only at the end of the year, in Arrestan, which is in the neighborhood of Homs. It's a city, of course, but in the governorate of Homs. And it was one of the cities or areas very well known to have a lot of its population in the army before the revolution. And thus, a lot of the descendants from the army were originally from Arrestan, okay? And then we can continue about talking about filmmakers and witnesses, video activists and filmmakers, and what happened next, what developed. Because what interests me most, of course it interests me a lot for us filmmakers, what changes in times of political or radical political changes, but also what changes in filmmaking itself, not only in us filmmakers. And I quote Jessica. Where's Jessica? She's not here. She's there, yeah. I quote Jessica because she said this morning something interesting. We think we are not connected, but we are. So what interests me is the changes in filmmaking that happened in Syria and that will affect the rest of the world. So can we play, please, the...
هاي مدينة الرستن واللي اسمها أريتوزا تاريخيا عصت على جميع الغزاة من الفرنسيين والعثمانيين حتى الأقطاع ما حكمها. حتى قبل الإسلام خالد بن الوليد عجزت عنه ما فتحها إلا بخطة بعد حصار 6 شهور بخدعة بدخول الصناديق على أساس أنه مؤونة ودخول العسكر ضمن الصناديق وتم فتحها.
احنا ظلينا اسبوع 6 ايام محاصرين من قبل الدبابات، من قبل الامن. ذبحونا 6 ايام، قصف على مدينة الرسم، قصف عشوائي.
نزلت الرسام في بستان الزيتون غرب باغا. عدد القتلى الشهداء 52، لم يوجد فيهم جريح. تصوروا أنهم كلهم قتلوا. أما مذبحة كفر قاسم فكانت 37.
هذا من أحد نشطاء مدينة الرستان، كان ذات حركة شديدة في الشارع، وله الفضل الكبير بالتظاهر في مدينة الرستان وشرح مساوئ النظام، فانتقموا منه أشد انتقام وأحرقوا بيته بالكامل وضربوه بالدبابات.
فات الأمل على البيت بعد قصف مدينة الرستان ب5 أيام. صاحب البيت قتل لأنه كان يطلع من المظاهرات. كان من المظاهرات وبلش إطلاق النار على المتظاهرين، وكان هو أحد القتلى. وقت اللي بيكونوا المتظاهرين طالعين سلميا يطلقوا عليهم النار، معناتها شو القصد؟ ما قصد قتل المتظاهرين. بعدين قاموا بحرق البيت، تكسير الأساس الموجود فيه، غسالات أوتوماتيك، أي شيء كانوا يكسروه وينزلوه. المطبخ المونة كلها كبوها فوق بعضها، زتوها بالأرض. عام فظعوا فينا، قاموا باغتيال كل واحد قام بالمظاهرات. قطعوا عنا الماء والكهرباء والهاتف طول فترة القصف.
اخواتي خلال دخول الجيش توفوا، نحن مفكرين انه هربانين. بعدين جابوا لنا اياهم، الواحد بعد 7 ايام جابوا لنا اياه مشفى العسكري بكفي، الواحد بعد 20 يوم مفكرينه هربان، مفكرينه مشان ما ياخذوه يعتقلوه الكلاب. اخذوهم اثنيناتهم وقتلوهم.
واحد راح على المزرعة
جابوا لنا اياهم ميتين.
واحد بعثنا على المزرعة يسقي، بعد 15 يوم بعثونا من المشفى الوطني تاخذوا ابنكم. ونحن ما عارفين عنه شيء. واحد راح على دوامه وهو موظف بالزراعة، كمان كل فكرنا انه راح على دوام ما عندنا نعرف عنه شيء. وموعودين انه بلكي ان شاء الله هرب مع هالعالم، انه من خوفه من القصف وغيره سوا. بعد 20 يوم وهلا كمان باعثيننا تاخذوا ابنكم من المشفى.
أنا العسكري المجند عناد عبد الخالق الشيخ خلف من مواليد الرستان فوقاني. أعلن انشقاقي عن الجيش العربي السوري بما شاهدت عيني في درعا وفي إدلب من قتل أهالي العزال. أنا أول شيء كنت أخدم بالشام بالفوج 47 قوات خاصة. أخذونا على درعا. أخذونا على درعا، شو قالوا لنا أول شيء؟ إنه في عصابة إرهابية بدنا نروح نخلص أهل درعا منه. رحنا ما شفت بني آدم والله خلقه شايل سلاح ولا بني آدم. بالنسبة للقتل أشوف عيونه يطلق نار على أطفال صغار وعلى مدنيين لا لهم ذنب ولا لهم شيء. من أجل شو؟ لأنهم عم يتظاهروا. تميت أنا 2 شهر بدرعا. الجيش دائما كلياته ميت من الجوع، ما في لا أكل لا في شرب. مين يطعم الجيش؟ أهل درعا المدنية. فوق ما يطعم الجيش أهل درعا المدنية يؤمروا العساكر بإطلاق النار عليهم. ليش رفضت إطلاق النار؟ بيجي بشيل المخزن من سلاحي أنا وبفشخني براسي 3 فشوخة بالضبط.
الجيش اللي ما بده يحمي شعبه ليش جيش؟ هذا جيش معناتها لابن الأسد، مو جيش لسوريا، مو جيش إلنا. بعدين الجيش بينزل على الشوارع، بينزل على المدن، هذا من حساب مين؟ تكلفته من حساب مين؟ هذا لمصلحة مين؟ هذا في مصلحة للبلد؟ مصلحة للوطن؟ مصلحة صار لتر المازوت معدن لاقيه؟ لأنه الدبابة كل نهار بدها 1000 لتر و2000 لتر؟ بدها كازية الدبابة.
نحن طالعين أدلب ارتكبوا مجازر شيء غريب عجيب. الرايح والجاي، الميتور يكون ماشي يطلقوا عليه نار، ميتور دراجة نارية، بعد ما يقوسوا عليه شو يسووا فيه؟ يقتلوه، يشيلوه، شو يحطوا حدود منه؟ سلاح. قناة الدنيا بالضبط ماشي قدامنا، قتلنا انه واحد انه هذا عنصر ارهابي، يحطوا سلاح منه انه على اساس انه شو قتلوه هن مسكوه. شو يسوي قناة الدنيا؟ مثلا يكون واحد عنده مزرعة عنده شيان، يشيلوا مثلا ياخذوه على المزرعة يصوروه بالمزرعة انه هذا شو، انه واحد ارهابي، هو شو عنصر امن تابع للجيش، تابع لعصابات الاسد. لا ما اتحمل الشيء هذا، يعني عم اشوف قتل وضرب واهانات على الشعب، انا بترك اهل شعبه. اجيت لقيت مدينتي مدينه الرستان، اجيت لقيتها منتهيه نهيان. بهذيك الساعه حملت حالي وهربت، انضميت الى الضباط الاحرار.
بإنه حق بيقطع الاتصالات عن مدن بأكملها، وبيقطع المي وبيقطع الكهرباء. بإنه حق. هل انقلبت الرسن كليتها إرهابية وسلفية وكليتها مندسين وكليتها مجرمين كليتها عصابات مسلحة؟ بعدين الاتصالات ليش بدها تنقطع؟ هي قطاع خاص أم قطاع عام؟ وإلا لأنه صاحب الشركة هو رامي مخلوف مثل ما بده ابن الأسد بيمشي، لأنه نحن بمزرعة، نحن مع عصابة عم نتعامل، ما عم نتعامل مع دولة. عندنا بسوريا ما في شيء اسمه دولة.
هاي نتائج حملة خميس ما بنحبك، حملة شعبية على نفقة الشعب، نظافة كاملة، لأنه الدولة ما عم تنظفها من يوم حملة الجيش. نحن عاملين كل خميس اسمه خميس ما بنحبك.
جتني القذيفة كانت الكنة والأولاد بالمطبخ، وهذيك برضه واقفين بأرض الدار، رشقت على عينه وما وعينا على حالنا لما جتنا القذيفة. واستشهدوا أولادي اثنين، واحد متجوز وواحد أحزب، واحد 28 وواحد 27. الشباب واحد على الرئيس، و24 ساعة طرق رصاص علينا على الدار. بس منين بده الشعب يتمن له؟ رئيس علينا وعم تحاربنا. ما بدنا اياه، ما بدنا اياه، بدنا سقط النظام، ما بدنا اياه، بدي رقبته انا. كرامة لاولادي.
هاي الطلقة هذا مسماري بولاد عيار 5.5. هاي بتكون بقلب هاي الغلاف تبع النحاس. هاي بعد ما تطير بعد مسافة أو زمن محدد بتتفجر هاي النحاس. فلما عم تدخل بجسم الإنسان وعم توصل للزمن تتفجر، عم تتفجر بالجسم، عم تؤدي لتشقق الأحشاء أو الرأس أو أي شيء تفجير. هاي طلق شيلكا مضاد طيران عيار 23 ملم، كمان ضربت على الغرفة. هاي جزء من قذيفة BMB. هاي البلوزة هي اللي جنت على هالدار، هاي اللي حقدت عليه. شافوا البلوزة عم تتحرك فكروا انه في حدا بالدار، ويقولوا انه في قناص بالدار، وهاي البلوزة هي القناص. هاي هي القناص اللي سبب دمار نص الدار.
أنا مواطن من مدينة الرسم، الشاهد على موج جريمي أبشع من جريمة ارتكبت بحق شاب من شباب مدينة الرسم. قام الجيش بإطلاق النار عليه، وقع بالأرض. جي ضابط صار يقوس فوق راسه ويقول له أنت إرهابي وأنت سلفي وأنتم مندسين. وبعد ما أخذوه على المستشفى العسكري، اللي يا ريته مستشفى عسكري، هو مسلخ، لأن ما في مستشفى بالعالم بيحوي سجن. نزلوه على المعتقل 15 يوم تحت التعذيب بدون إجراء أي عمل جراحي أو إجراء إسعافي لعلاجه. كان متصاوب بإجره وعم يعذبوه ويضربوه، وبدهم قبل كل شيء يقول لهم إنه هن يسألوه مين ربك، بده يقول لهم بشار، لأنه رفض يقول لهم كلمة بشار. ضل ياكل قتل أكثر من 15 يوم هو مصاب دون علاج. يعني إنسان بوله برازه عم يضل تحت منه، ما في حدا ينظف له. اذا ما في حدا يهتم فيه، في حدا يشيل براز من تحته او يشيل البول من عليه. معقوله مصاب خلال 40 يوم ما يتعلق له كيس سيروم، اجي الاقيه عظم وجلد مجعد. ومن بعد المنه الله شلون هيأ له طبيب طالعه وقرر انه يعالجه. زرعوا صفيحه معدنيه، يمكن لو نجار مشتغلها كانت احسن من طبيب، لأنه برغي راكب فيها 10 سنت وبرغي راكب فيها نص سنت. وقت اللي شفته راح أموت عليه. دفعت رشوة بحدود 50,000. بعد المنة أخذته على المستشفى، مع العلم أنه منعوني بأي مكان كان أني أعالجه أو يسمعوا أنه عم يتعالج. بده إياني أطالعه يموت بالبيت أو يموت بالمستشفى عندهم. أو من كثر ما عذبوه صار معه التهاب بالمثاني وانسلخت المخاطية بأكملها. الدكاترة اللي شافوها ما صدقوا أن تطلع هي من حالب إنسان يعني طبيعي، مستحيل. قطره بيتجاوز 1.5 سنتي، بطول 25 سنت.
كنا على العاصي عم نتدرج، كنا واقفين صار يضربوا على المي، كنا طلعنا لبرات المي، نحن على الطريق صار يضربوا علينا، صار يرش علينا الرصاص، رش الجيش. حسيت بوجع مثل الحرق.
يعني أطفال عم تسبح على العاصي وما معاهم شيء إلا أولاد إخوالهم، أولاد شباب 12 واحد اللي تصاوبوا، حتى بعد ما صاروا يزحفوا على الأرض ضل الضرب عليهم شغال، وعلى طول محاصرين والضرب شغال. ليش ما بنعرف؟ دائما عايشين بقلق وبخوف. الشباب 2 معاهم وصاروا يعملوا لهم هيك، يأشروا لهم بإيديهم إنه ما معنا شيء غير هالأطفال اللي عم تزحف بالأرض. زادوا الضرب عليهم بزيادة مع إنهم يأشروا لهم هيك بإيديهم التنتين، وإنه يا أخي معنا أطفال تحت ما معنا شيء نحن غير الأولاد، ومع هيك ما ردوا عليهم، زيدوا بالقواس زيادة. اللي عم يأشر لهم رشوا عليه مش كامل، يعني الله حمام بطح على الأرض فورا. الخلاصة اللي فهمتها العالم والشعب السوري كله إنه المحل اللي عم يفوتوا الأمن ما عم بيعود فيه أمان خالص، بقى يضب الأمن تبعه والعالم كلها بخير.
أنا المجند رامي فايز العمار من مواليد مدينة الرستة، من مرتبات إدارة الأشغال العسكرية فرع قطنة. جانا أمر بإطلاق النار على المتظاهرين. المتظاهرين عم يطلعوا، عم يطلبوا إسقاط النظام وعم يطلع الجيش. نحن صاير فرع قطنة، مكان الفرع بنص مدينة قطنة. بيطلبوا منا إنه نطلع ونطلق النار عليهم. أي واحد من الشعب تقدم عنكم معكم أمر لحالكم تقوسوا النار عليه. جميع الضباط اللي مر عليه يعطونا أمر بإطلاق النار على المتظاهرين بحجة إنه مجموعات إرهابية. يعملوا اجتماع أول شيء، بسلمونا كليتنا أسلحة وذخيرة، بطاونا لبرا، بتنشرونا بالشارع. وطبعا الضباط بتضل متخبي جوا، بشلفوها بظهر العسكري. كل المجندين بتعرف هالشي، بس خايفة هي على حالها وخايفة على أهلها. طبعا أنا رفضت ذلك، لأنه مو معقول نضرب رصاص على الشعب السوري، لأنه لا يملك أي سلاح وهو شعب أعزل وليس له علاقة بالمجموعات الإرهابية. فاعتبروني خاين وحطوني بسجن الكتيبة لمدة 16 يوم. صار تعذيب طبعا، ضرب وتهديد إنه يحولوني على فرع المخابرات بتهمة إنه أنا متضامن مع المجموعات الإرهابية. وأنا بنفسي عاد هربت من السجن وانضمت إلى لواء الضباط الأحرار.
ابنه من امبارح انشق، قال لي يا أمي ما أقدر أروح على قطعته، بدهم ياخذونا على دير الزور. هناك بدهم يخلوني أرش على العالم، يا بدي أنقتل يا بدي أقتل. لا خليني أنقتل هون بشرف أحسن لي. وانشاق من الجيش ولحق الضباط الأحرار. هو تيسر من امبارح الظهريات، مثل ما تيسر 2:30 جيني خبره 2:30. من وقت اللي صار الرصاص بهالليل قلت خلاص ابني راح.
So this film was done at the end of the year, or it was released at the end of the year, and was screened on one of the channels, regional channels, and in about 38 cities around the world. And during the Global Day, we have arranged for DocsBox, or a Solidarity Global Day, on March 15th. It is, of course, a very, how can I say, precise portrait of one or element in the revolution, or in the situation of what's happening today in Syria. But that was in 2011, and things have radically developed later. What happened actually is that when one of the filmmakers stepped in to make films, and that was not the only film, but not the only filmmaker, but a few filmmakers stepped in to make films or to just film because they didn't know what to do with film. There was a mixture between forming an opinion, a political opinion, and forming or envisaging a structure for a film. Because when you want to make a film about the revolution, you would like to say what the film will be about, and how the story will unfold and develop. And that was, for most of the filmmakers, impossible, because then you are asking them to predict what will happen in Syria, and that was impossible, and is impossible. So what happened is that when these filmmakers stepped in to film, they definitely had to work with other activists to be able to secure secure paths, and to get to know people, because most of the people don't want to appear in films not to be identified. And this developed into collaborations later on. And they are still going on, these collaborations. So one side of the collaboration is that filmmakers became trainers, because they started training activists on how to handle cameras, how to handle editing, how to film, what is of an immediate importance to be uploaded to the media or sent as a reportage, edited as a reportage, what to be saved as filmic material. And this, one of these examples were Bassel Shhadeh, a filmmaker who some of you here in the room know him, met him at DocsBox in one of the workshops, who went to Homs at the end of last year, and stayed there for over 5 months before he was killed in Homs. He was training activist and video journalist on editing and on camera, and that's why the most of the reports that developed in Homs, or actually most of the reports developed on Al Jazeera, on Al Arabiya, were mostly covering Homs. Because then, starting from there, Homs became a producer of short, contained, well-made reports, unlike other parts of Syria where the tube was the only media, because it was short clips, you cannot understand anything. But in Homs and in other cities as well, but Homs mainly, there were a lot of attention, so several filmmakers went, several workshops have been done. Of course, workshops, all the terminology I'm using, you need to adapt to, bombing and shelling, so it's not a workshop where we sit and talk and have microphones. So the material transmitted or going out from Homs was more coherent, more media compatible, I would say. And of course, this also partnered with the interest from Al Jazeera and Arabiya, which is politically unindependent, to cover what was going on in Homs. Sorry. Can we have water? Is there somebody who can help us? Thank you. Because in Homs it was very clear that it was possible for the media to claim that this is not a Sunni Islamic protest or grassroots protest, because there is a lot of other sects and ethnic groups involved, etc., etc. And it is not as focal or as central as Damascus and Aleppo. But later, of course, everything changed and still changing. I can't say anything without feeling that it's too old information. You know, do you have such a feeling? I can't, especially coming from there, you know, like yesterday was different from the day I put the notes, so it's, anyway. Yeah. Lazy. Anyway, what I want to say, there was a lot of ethical questions in filmmaking and also in activism, because in activism, ethical questions are easier, not very complex. You don't want to risk the people, that's it. But you risk yourself. But in filmmaking, it's a little bit more complicated, because if I risk myself, I should be independent and free and risk myself, have the liberty of risking myself. But then you can't do that because you have a whole team who's working with you. You have an editor, if you're not editing yourself. You have a producer. Maybe you have a committed financier, a broadcaster. So it's not an easy question regarding safety, for example. How would you, in activism, you are responsible for a short period of time, because you're shooting this video, this clip, then you're uploading it. You don't need to keep it. So the risk is for a short term. Regarding filmmaking, I'm not saying regarding your life, but regarding filmmaking. While as a filmmaker, you have a hard disk of 2 terabytes, and you already requested another one to be smuggled from Jordan or Lebanon. Because of course there is a lot of restrictions on camera sales, on mobile phones, on hard disk, flash sticks, memories, everything connected to 3G internet, wireless internet connections, and so on. So it is complicated as ethical questions regarding safety of yourself and others, but also of whether, as Eva yesterday said, the problem with calling the participants in the film subjects, you know. When you're shooting a dead person, or a killed, or for his relatives, or for the activist, a martyr, when you're filming that martyr, a body, a dead body, how do you handle that? Do you handle that with the same respect of their families, of the believers, or do you handle it as a victim? So it's a lot of ethical questions, and I'm not saying that you stand as a filmmaker, that you stand and think about it. You don't have the time to think about it, you know. The problem is that after a month or two while doing this, you develop a sense of either radical comfort of holding the truth. I know, I can, I am able, I'm allowed to do that. Or you develop a complete different stance of saying that I can't. I can't film, I can't edit, I can't watch all the rushes and then bring them here to show them to audience, because audience, at the end, this is a film and the watchers are audience, you know. And you question yourself again and again whether because at the end of the day, filmmaking has rules, and it has to have, it has a film